We do have quite a few good questions. Before I jump on that, there's one more thing I want to just post in here. This is being recorded and it will be posted on their YouTube channel, MoJo Scottsdale. I'm going to go ahead and post the YouTube link in there. Go ahead and click that link. Make sure you subscribe. Previous webinars are also on there. And like they said, they just keep giving information. So definitely check that out. Let's jump into some of these here. First one, we got any advice on how to get a contingent offer accepted?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I like this.
Go
ahead.
Well, there's a couple different tips and tricks. Obviously, we covered a lot of them, but I think with a contingent offer, I would recommend that part of the earnest money maybe going hard after the inspection period. If you're going up against 10 or 20 other offers and you're losing out, one after another, I think it's okay to make a small portion of that earnest as long as your clients are okay with it. And you explain to them, look, if your deal does not go through, you're going to lose out on this earnest money. But that's something that I've been doing lately, and it's been working.
Yeah, we actually have a thing talking about this as far as what you can do with those who need to sell in order to buy, and a process that we go through and everything. But it's a great question. It's a tougher nut to crack, as in this market, getting that contingent offer. And it does matter. Are you under contract, or you still have to sell the house, and those things factor in as well. But like Josh said, you want to find ways to incentivize the seller. And if you do still have to list it, you should be 100% ready to go.
Yeah, if you're not quite under contract with a buyer on that listing, I would say it's going to be very, very tough.
Yeah.
You can certainly submit and do what you can to get them to accept your offer. Like I said, maybe making part of the earnest go hard. But that's a very, very difficult situation. Now, if you already have another contract, that makes it a little bit more attractive, and your clients are probably going to be more willing to allow some of that earnest to go hard.
Yep. We could go longer, but let's move on to another question.
Are you requiring buyers to view property as a listing agent?
Are we requiring buyers to review
property?
Like unrepresented, maybe is what Dennis is asking.
As in maybe during the coming soon phase, letting unrepresented buyers view the property in the coming soon. Is that correct?
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen.
Oh, sight unseen offers. Like, will you accept an offer from someone sight unseen? Yeah, that's going to be a tricky situation. Depends on. It's going to really come down to kind of the story behind the sight unseen offer, and why they couldn't, and price point. Is it a cash offer? You've got to know going into it that sight unseen offer is twice as likely to cancel in the during the escrow period than another offer. Literally, probably maybe even more than double the percentage chance. So if you're going to accept that offer, I would say keep your backups very close, and obviously try to shorten their free look period, shorten their inspection period down to where they're a little more committed.
Yeah, and I'd want to know too that their agent, the buyer's agent, went through and FaceTimed with them throughout the entire property and spent quite a bit of time there, really getting their client comfortable with them. But I think, like Morgan said, it kind of comes down to the story. Talking to that buyer's agent, finding out how committed their client is. Maybe they're only doing a 3-day inspection period, but there are so many offers or so many buyers right now that are just throwing offers out, on multiple properties at the same time and not necessarily disclosing that.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing properties come back on the market.
Yeah, potentially there's all kinds of things you could do to strengthen that too. Have them put together a list of their negatives about the house. Like, what are your reasons when you see it in person that you wouldn't buy it? And also, tell them if they cancel, hold back a portion of their earnest if they do cancel. Look, my client will go under contract with you, but we're going to have $2,000 of your earnest is going to be non-refundable upfront. Now, how serious are they about buying the house?
Yep.
Are they serious enough to say, hey, I'll lose the $2,000 if I walk through it and don't like it? if I'm just canceling because I don't like it. So there's different things you can do to, to try to hold them to that offer. But yeah, it does present its own challenges.
And if by chance, and we're not seeing a lot of sellers do this lately, but if by chance the seller did a pre-listing inspection, maybe they've got a listing in their hand that they can literally hand over to a buyer that has not actually viewed the home in person and say, hey, review this inspection and then waive your inspection period.
Yep.
I mean, they might not be willing to do that, but worth a shot.
Yep.
So
Next question.
What are your current strategies with regard to working with investors?
I would say that varies. Investors. So it used to be kind of a joke about a year or two ago. Investor would come in and say, "Oh, I want a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and I want it $200K under market value." You're like, yeah, you and everybody else with a pulse wants that.
And if I find that, I'm keeping it for myself.
Exactly. So it was kind of funny because you literally get people calling up assuming they were the first person to ever discover Phoenix, and now they're going to come in there and snatch up all the property. So qualify your investor. You've got to know who they are, what they're looking for, how serious are they? Are they a person like that is like really just deal hunting, to the point of, yeah, it's just, you really want to qualify them and know, and if they are serious and they understand the market and they understand that even though they're an investor, they're probably going to have to pay asking price or very close to it, then
And what type of investor are they? Are they going to fix and flip the property? Are they going to buy it and hold it and rent it? Kind of what their situation is.
VRBO.
But, obviously it's a lot easier. I mean, honestly, it's I don't want to call it easy, but there's definitely properties that you can buy and rent out right now because rental rates are so darn high. I mean,
yeah.
Morgan and I, we're buying properties and we're finding renters for them, and we're getting them at a good enough price to where it makes sense.
Yeah, there's in this market, there's definitely still properties with yield as far as that goes. Honestly, people are paying a premium for clean, well done, remodeled, move-in ready properties. Why? Because they're in central locations. They're very nicely done, and it's as close as you can get to a new house, and it's at a lower price tag than you'd have to pay if it was a brand new house. And you get to live in that well-established neighborhood in the school district you want, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but that value, isn't necessarily coming because they bought it on the cheap. It's coming because they've gone through the pain, sweat, and suffering of doing all the improvements. And they've, had the contractors in and out, and, they put the sweat equity into the house. And that's where that value increase is really coming from, is that everything's done. And the buyer doesn't have to come in and do anything. And there are buyers that'll pay a premium for that. So there are definitely still deals in that regard to be had. And they literally come up every week. A deal comes up. It just kind of depends on how your specific investor is viewing property and what are they buying it for, because that makes a big difference.
Yep. Next question.
So when you say as is, a clarifying question, when you say as is, do you mean no repairs will be considered?
Correct. Yeah, as is, no repairs will be considered. Now, once again, if you find out that there's a major plumbing issue, or there's a slab leak, or it needs a brand new roof or a new AC unit.
Yeah, so keep going. I just want to interject this. As far as is, you can write an as is, and there's nothing in the contract to stop you from still going back and asking for repairs should something come up.
Yeah. Now, like with our clients, we always advise them, hey, look, you're going to be buying it as is. That means we're not going to go back and nickel and dime them on any, there's a leaky faucet or,
even
burnt
stuff
out
that's,
light bulb. Or
that's like mid-range. As is really kind of means as is, but it doesn't mean, they get up there in the attic and they find mold all throughout it that, you don't have to ask for remediation. It's one of those things. It's like, what would the seller rather hear? If you offered as is, would the seller rather hear that you canceled, you're out, you're done? Or would they rather hear you come back and say, hey, my guy's out, he's canceling, but we discovered that the roof is extremely, shot. It needs a new roof. And if you're willing to redo the roof, we'll stay in, and so.
Yeah. Or if you're willing to give a credit, maybe we meet in the middle. I mean, there's lots of ways to work it out, but as is, yeah, we're not going to go back and ask for repairs. And there's plenty of situations where we don't ask for anything.
Yeah, we're not going to advocate for this in the sense that, because there might be some hard feelings from the listing agent and even the seller. Oh, you said as is. But yeah, we said as is, providing it was in reasonable shape, and this wasn't disclosed and that wasn't. So
yeah, we found mold in the attic. And
Yeah.
so we're coming back and saying, hey, look, we're either going to cancel, or if you remediate it, we'll stay in the deal.
Yeah, had you disclosed that there was mold in the attic, we never would have wrote as is.
Good stuff. So do you have to share terms with every agent presenting offers?
If that is the agreement that we have made, if the seller said, yes, we want you to share the terms of pricing, terms, whatever like that, and that's what we've decided to do, then yes, we're sharing that with everyone. We're not picking and choosing. We're not going to say, okay, these 5 agents will share the terms and these 5 we won't. We're open and honest with every single person.
Yeah, in terms, could be a little loose, I would say, in the sense of like, closing date, price, cash, finance, not necessarily the nitty gritty. And Bob wrote a home warranty at $890 and his is, $850. That's probably too much in the weeds.
Yeah. We're talking about like, just the major terms.
Mhm.
Very cool. Have you found post-possession requirement of 60 days? Has that caused less offers?
On that deal that I was telling you about, no. We did have a couple agents that called up and said, hey, my client really needs to get in there before 60 days. And I went back to the seller and still presented the offer and everything else. But my clients were very adamant about the 60 days, and which we counter them on it. But no, we didn't have, I mean, maybe out of 10 buyers, maybe we lost 1 or 2 of them. But remember, we're only trying to find 1 buyer for that house.
Yeah, and post possessions, it's one of those things. I've got currently a house that we've closed on, and my buyers are awaiting the seller to move out, and it wasn't something that they wanted to do really at all. They would have preferred to have the house, but they liked the house enough to wait for it, and there was no budging. The seller wasn't budging on the post possession whatsoever. So it's just kind of a factor. So great for the seller, and the buyers didn't like it, and I don't like it, but I mean, it's what they had to do to get that house.
Post possessions can be a little risky.
They're a pain in the butt.
Yeah, so kind of keep that in mind, and you want to make sure that you let your clients know all the ins and outs of a post possession, both the seller and the buyer.
Yeah, I wouldn't rush into a post possession. But there are good reasons for it. Going back to the contingent offer, at the first question, honestly, our favorite thing for someone who has to sell and then buy is you say, hey, let's list your house. Let's get you under contract with a long post possession that we can extend if we need to. Let's give you 3 months or so to find a property. And then, they can go shopping armed without that contingency. And they know, and here's the thing, maybe you get them an extra 25,000 or so that they weren't expecting, that they can now put towards that next house. It's a better situation once so it's a good situation to use if you have someone who needs to sell their house and buy another, if you can get them sold with a longer post possession.
Awesome. A lot of great questions, guys. Next one we've got. Have you ever had a seller want to cancel the contract and the buyers do not want to cancel? If so, how did it turn out?
We've definitely had this situation before. The thing is you're, as a seller, you're locked in.
You're stuck.
You've got very limited options. I mean, the best thing you can do is make it difficult, until the buyer know you're not making any repairs. So, as a seller, that's another thing to think about is, in the beginning, the seller holds all the cards as far as what offer they're going to accept and, how they're going to counter and that kind of thing. But once they once they put pen to paper and sign on that dotted line, they have agreed to sell that property, even if, unless the buyer breaches the contract. And so that's I guess if the seller really wants out, has the buyer breached? Are they about to? Those are the things I would look at.
Yeah, and if the seller truly wants out, maybe you talk to the seller and figure out a dollar amount that they can go back and offer the buyer to cancel the contract.
Yeah, and why does the seller want out? Does the seller want out because they think they can sell it for more today, or they have someone else who's offered them more? That definitely factors in as well. But yeah, as a seller, you're pretty well stuck.
Cool. Can you advise on how to look at offers based on appraisal? We had 12 offers and 5 of them offered 5,000 or 10,000 over appraisal price.
Go ahead.
Well, so you're saying that basically in their escalation, or not escalation clause, but in their waiver of appraisal clause, they put in that they had
they were over.
They were $10,000, basically like a cushion.
I think they're saying, how do you want to really evaluate that when you're questioning if it's going to appraise, right?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe.
Well, I guess first and foremost, you kind of hope that they would just waive the appraisal entirely, but if they're not.
Yeah, and know your comps too.
Yeah.
You got to know your comps. I mean, here's the thing with appraisers is as we know, it's kind of a roll of the dice. Did you wake up on the bad side of the bed that morning or the good side, when they came out to walk your property? So if you know the comps and you're saying, okay, they're not really there, we have a whole class we get into about this too, on how to ensure your house appraises. And a key takeaway from that is you've got to meet your appraiser at the house, and you got to provide them with the comps. You got to show them the reasons why this house is worth this. And if it's worth that because 5 buyers all paid within a few $1,000s of where you're under contract, show them, provide that information to that appraiser. So
yeah, and I mean, I just had the situation on a property where I received probably somewhere between 10 to 15 offers, and most people had that $5,000 to $10,000 cushion. I don't think anyone completely waived the appraisal. So in that sense, then it basically came down to what the price was, what were some of the other terms. Did anyone provide a letter? Just you're looking at the whole package and not just at one specific term. And every situation is a little bit different. I know, like, our team members, they'll approach us with very specific scenarios, and we can help them navigate that. But
yeah,
on kind of a broad sense, it's a little tougher.
Yep.
Kind of similar. This is a long one, so I'll read it a little slow for you.
Right.
Have you ever had a buyer that agreed to pay 10,000 over appraised value up to maximum amount, and then when it came to the end, the buyer was to pay an additional 6,000 to the max amount? Buyer refused to pay the additional and was willing to lose their earnest. Buyer and new seller was buying another home and needed the proceeds, so seller gave in.
So they agreed to it, but then used it kind of what they found out as a negotiating tactic later on. Buyers will, some people will do what they'll do. And most people are going to come through and, if they agree to pay 10,000 over, they're going to pay the 10,000, right? I was going to say the clause that I like best when you are waiving the appraisal contingency, it essentially states that we'll pay the difference between your list price and what the increase is from my buyer. But you, Mr. Seller and listing agent, have to get the appraisal at least to your list price. And so that puts some onus back on them. If they just way over listed it, and the appraisal comes in 20 grand below their list price, and we had to go 10 grand over their list price, that appraisal contingency kicks back in. We still have the right to cancel, back out, everything else. It's just in the difference between the listing price and the purchase price that's where we're agreeing to make up the difference. That's my favorite appraisal contingency waiver, because it puts the onus back on the lister and the seller to say, hey, you're the ones that priced it here. It needs to appraise it, at least that.
And that's why it's important to also have a very large earnest deposit too. So going back and even countering some of these buyers that, yeah, they might come in with the most amazing offer, but then their earnest is only like $2,000, which isn't much. And so making sure that you go back and you counter them on that and get a very nice, sizable earnest deposit so that they don't want to back out or cancel the contract.
Yeah, the thing about earnest deposits too, while you're talking about it, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, think of how much, like over a 30-day, 45-day period for your seller. I mean, today, sure, they could go out and sell their house again, but just in a more of a balanced market, I mean, they may have moved out at this point in time. If there's like $3,000 in earnest, you know how easy it is for someone to walk away from $3,000 and say, take a hike? Your seller could have moved out. They've canceled utilities. They blah, 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 blah. I mean, just on and on and on. That earnest needs to compensate and needs to hurt if that buyer to stop them from just up and walking away. And if it's a low amount, it's going to be really easy for them to do it. A nicer house could come along and they say, oh, you know what? $5,000, no big deal.
Yep.
All right, we're going to jump back to the economy a little bit. So as far as the real estate market's concerned, all looks good, but what about the U.S. economy overall? If the country's economy were to have a crisis, how do you think this will affect the housing market in the country, and are we likely to have this happen?
That is a great question. I think it's one that we all are kind of looking at and watching. The post-COVID, or maybe we're still in it, I don't know, some places are, environment is tough. Some businesses thrived, others struggled, on a nationwide level. Obviously, you've got the stimulus package and some of those things where they've, pumped many trillions into the money supply and the economy and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds, especially those stimuluses and that. But the one thing is, in an inflationary environment, assets are king. So if you are a homeowner and prices are inflating, it's to your benefit to own property. Even the money you're making becomes cheaper to pay your mortgage with. So there are a few things like that. And on the nationwide thing, I mean, we're both just super bullish Arizona. I mean, we literally think Arizona is the best state and city, Scottsdale, Phoenix specifically, to live in. And more people are discovering that over and over. We're not in Flint, Michigan, or Grand Rapids. Sorry to pick on Michigan.
Or anywhere in Michigan.
Cleveland, Ohio. We're not in some of these other, in the Rust Belt or other places, even Chicago, a great city, but, a lot of people only live there because they grew up there. So we're in a great spot where, we've got few natural disasters, great weather, we're close to, everybody knows the reasons we're here. But for those reasons, I think we will do better.
We've got to be like top 3 most desirable states to live in. So
for sure,
on a national average, we're not that worried or concerned about it.
Yep. Very cool. Quickly, out of respect for everyone's time, we're going to jump into one more good question here. And then if you guys have additional questions, or if we didn't get to it, please email team@mojoscottsdale.com. We'll make sure those get answered for you guys. Last question here. Do you guys have reliable resources you can recommend to stay up to date on what's happening in the nation's economy, or maybe tools that you offer as a team for your team members?
Yeah. So all of our team members have access to the Crawford report. That's something that we pay for and provide. And I mean, they're the gurus on Arizona real estate statistics.
Yeah. We always every time we do a market update once a month with the team as far as what we're seeing. We also mastermind as part of that too. But like I said, Josh and I are always digging deep into the economy and latest statistics and businesses that are moving here and that, and have our finger on the pulse too, from our clients that are relocating. And, we're seeing it from all angles. And that is one of the things we do is present that information, to our team and team members, because it's useful. It's useful out there in listing presentations. It's useful in buyer presentations. People want to work with people who are knowledgeable and informed and have their finger on the pulse of the market. And, we want to make sure we're there, and we want to make sure our team's there.